Welcome back to the Kevin O'Connor Show. Joining me today, Jason Timpf. Jason, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. I can't complain. I'm so ready for the NBA to heat up. I can sense it. The playoff football has been spectacular, but it also is the omen of the times. It tells us that the NBA is getting ready to kick it into high gear.
Absolutely true. Football has been absolutely unbelievable. We'll have Justin Boone from Yahoo Sports way later in the show, but we got a lot of basketball to talk about, despite things being a little bit of a lull as of late in the NBA, Jason. There's still a lot going on. We have the trade deadline in a few weeks, a lot of unhappy fan bases, a lot of interesting stuff happening. So I want to start off with you here, Jason. Where do you want to begin? I have three categories of topics for us. Unhappy fans, these fan bases that seem very disgruntled with their teams right now. We'll talk about them. Or hot stove questions, talk about some stuff around the trade deadline, or random thoughts. Where do you want to start with? Unhappy fans, hot stove questions, or random thoughts?
Let's get negative. Let's go with unhappy fans.
Okay, let's start off with unhappy fans. Knicks fans, they're turning on Karl Anthony-Towns. Over last week, Karl Anthony-Towns got ripped apart by Knicks fans, Jason, for a play that happened where he drove to the basket, slipped as he was getting up from the floor, and didn't get quite back onto the other end, didn't hustle back, and Knicks fans ripped into him for it. I think the replay itself didn't look quite as bad as it seemed like from the broadcast angle, but still, it did exemplify the lack of effort you often see from Karl Anthony-Towns. Do you think the criticism of Cat is fair?
You know, I do, but less so for that specific clip to the point that you're trying to make. Like, I think you can find various examples of that kind of lapse in effort from stars this time of year quite a bit. One of the things that I think is really funny about the NBA is, like, you have these teams that come out and they look great to start the season. And then inevitably you get into that December, January stretch, and it's just, that's where the 82 game grind really starts to wear on you, and some lapses in focus and intensity can start to come up. And then there are usually these teams that get off to disappointing starts, and they end up getting into December and January, and they're desperately trying to save their season, and so they can play some of the best basketball that they play all season. Look at Golden State and the Clippers, for example. But like, what I look at with the Knicks is they're just a textbook example of a team that I thought got off to an excellent start this season, like a really, really great start. And as a team, they've started to just kind of lose a little bit of that defensive intensity and focus on a possession-to-possession basis. And so with Cat in particular, he kind of is what he is to me. I'm more concerned about his mistake making than him necessarily playing hard in a big moment. So for instance, like, he's just had a couple of these mistakes this year that fall in line with the rest of his career, where in a big spot late in the game, he'll make an execution error. Like, there was a game against the Celtics where he chased Jordan Walsh off of a corner three when Jordan had only made 3 corner threes all season to that point. And he drove past him and got a layup. It was a huge blow to the Knicks in that game. Or in the Spurs game where he stops paying attention to Luke Cornett crashing out of the corner and gives up an and one offensive rebound that ends up basically costing them that game. There are a lot of examples of that, like that, in the postseason in the past, where he'll make a critical execution error defensively in a big spot. That, I think, is a bigger picture issue with the Knicks that isn't going away. This recent stretch to me is more, they have to play super hard to cover for Cat and Brunson anyway. And so when they relax, their defense just falls off of a cliff. And that's more or less what we've been seeing over the last month.
Well, and I think you're hitting on the source of the frustration with the Knicks. When it came to that play, it was just one of many moments, and it wasn't even the most significant one of all, the one that was most detrimental to the team. And I think when you look at the player himself and then you factor in his salary, the money that he's making, Karl Anthony-Towns this year is making $53.1 million, goes up to $57 million next year, then $61 million in the final year of his deal in 27-28 as a player option for that deal. And so when you consider Karl Anthony-Towns is making max player money, but he is not a leading scorer, he is not an anchor of your defense, he's just really one of the guys on your team making max player money. You tie that all together for Knicks fans, that's where it's like, geez, we've been teased with the idea of trading this guy for Giannis. we didn't even have to make this trade for Karl Anthony-Towns. Looking at what Julius Randle is doing in Minnesota, as frustrating as he was, this guy is even worse. And so for Knicks fans, I think, understandably so, you're pointing fingers in certain directions. Karl Anthony-Towns is definitely the most easily improvable spot if you can turn him into something. What is the fix for the Knicks, Jason? Is the fix possible with Cat, or is it only something that can happen without Karl Anthony-Towns for them to actually take the next step in the postseason?
This is where it's just about being realistic about what Cat's trade value is. I don't see any universe where you can turn him into something that tangibly improves the team. And so ultimately, what you have to look at is there have been stretches with Cat where it looked good. Specifically, you look at the Celtics series last year. I thought last year was mostly full of disappointments for the Knicks. I thought they underachieved in the regular season. They really struggled against the best teams in the league. They didn't exactly dominate Detroit, and then they completely decomposed against Indiana. But there was this ceiling that we saw in the Celtics series where the wings were able to do enough to cover for Brunson and Cat defensively. And then we've seen that for large chunks of the start of this season as well. And so there is a ceiling there that's worth trying to pursue, but I don't see any universe where they can get off of Cat and improve the team. So the best thing they can do is attempt to rectify things in-house with what they've got. I mean, unless you've heard something in terms of an option for them to flip Cat, I haven't seen anything that makes sense that another team would be interested in terms of taking Cat on with the amount of money remaining on his deal.
No, I don't think there's anything midseason. I think for the Knicks, if it's something involving Karl Anthony-Towns, it's waiting for the summer and praying that Giannis Antetokounmpo, with at that time only 1 year remaining on his contract, forces his way to you. And in that case, the Knicks would have another tradable first available, because then 2033 first would be available. They'd have the ability to flip Cat to another team and get some assets back. I don't think it'd be anything until the summer involving Karl Anthony-Towns. I think in the meantime for the Knicks, if they can get back to playing with more motion and movement on offense, and then also playing with two bigs, Cat just quite simply is not a 5. He needs to play the 4. He needs to play more often next to Mitchell Robinson and Ariel Hekporti. I think that's the key for the Knicks with the hand they've been dealt. You just can't play with Cat at the 5 as often as they have. I thought early in the season, Jason, it seemed like Mike Brown was going to use two bigs a lot more often, and he has in spurts when Josh Hart's been out. But I think he doesn't have a choice. I think if you're Mike Brown, you have to go to two bigs more often with Karl Anthony-Towns.
Do you think he's been leaning into that more as an attempt to continue to drive that kind of drive and kick mentality for the Knicks on offense that's been generating for them so many more catch and shoot threes? I think, like, even though I agree with you in principle and the idea, I think that's been the thought process. Is I think Mike's been indexing more towards ball handling. One of the subtle strengths of this Knicks team is they have a lot of good ball handlers. Even when you dig into their bench and you look at Jordan Clarkson and you look at Deuce McBride and you look at Tyler Kolek, they've just got a lot of dudes who can put the ball on the floor. And I think he's been leaning into that space and dribble penetration to generate quality threes. But ultimately, to your point, they can't guard well enough with Cat at the 5. And so I think trying to strike that balance more would certainly go a long way.
Yeah, I do think that's certainly an element of it. And Josh Hart is critical in that as well. And if Josh Hart is not knocking down a ton of shots, if he's not getting the respect of the defense, it's very hard to then play Mitchell Robinson or Hekporti out there as a second big. But that's ultimately what I think the Knicks at least have to experiment with more often moving forward in the season. And, hope to God, Karl Anthony-Towns, you get the good version of him come postseason time. Another unhappy fan base, Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks over the weekend, they gave up 82 points to the Celtics in the first half of a game. They gave up 132 in the game a couple days after they gave up 141 points to the Lakers. They're 3-3 since the trade, Jason. Trae Young, he was supposed to be the issue on defense. The Hawks were a little bit better earlier on in the season, but the defense has stunk. The offense has collapsed with CJ McCollum. They've been bottom 5 in the NBA with a 110 offensive rating ever since the trade. Is this just a coaching issue for Atlanta with Quinn Snyder? Is that really the number one issue with the Hawks right now?
Whoever you want to blame for the defense, I'm so glad you brought up the Trae Young piece of this, because that was frustrating for me when I was seeing, you can't argue with the on-off win-loss numbers, like they were kind of ridiculous, but when I would watch them play with Trae Young, the team would not be playing defense. And I'd be like, I can't look at this in good faith and say this is all Trae Young's fault. I think there are some good defenders on this team. Obviously, we know what Dyson Daniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker can do at the guard position. There have been moments where I see Onyeka Okongwu and Mohamed Gay kind of helping for each other on both ends of the floor, helping in screening actions and covering for each other as low men, where they kind of just cover a lot of ground and they look really imposing defensively. But their forwards are just so bad defensively. They're so bad. And that ultimately has been why this team has been so disappointing. This on paper was supposed to be this combination of athletic, versatile talent that just hasn't amounted to enough defensively on the perimeter. And, specifically, I thought in that Celtics game, and I'm sure this stood out to you, the level of comfort with which the Celtics ball handlers were operating with, their ball pressure was absolutely terrible in that game. And so it just felt like Derek White or Jaylen Brown or whoever it was that was dribbling on the ball, Anthony Simons as well, was able to just kind of comfortably get into their bag and settle into whatever pull-up jump shot they wanted, because they weren't getting up into the ball initially. They weren't pursuing over screens and making people uncomfortable. They were basically just in the right spot without any ball pressure on defense, and it was allowing the Celtics to just settle into easy shots. And they ended up hitting 15 pull-up jump shots in the game at 1.26 points per attempt. I just thought they allowed Boston to get way too comfortable. And ultimately, when Atlanta's at their best, they are in the ball. And I know Dyson Daniels didn't play in that game, but they're usually in the ball. They're forcing you to be uncomfortable. They're usually always pressuring that high post entry and forcing turnovers in horn sets around the top of the key. And then they get out and run, and they get out and run. And we've seen the Hawks do that and be good, but just nowhere near often enough to actually kind of materialize into consistent success. And I kind of point my finger to us jumping the gun a little bit on this team in terms of their perimeter talent, as still being a few years away from actually becoming refined two-way players.
Shouldn't they be better, though? I mean, look, Jalen Johnson is getting a lot of hype as a most, yeah, definitely. But Jalen Johnson's getting hype as a most improved player because of his leap on offense, and rightfully so. But he has regressed so significantly on the defensive end of the floor. And you look at the names on the paper, it's Jalen Johnson and Zachary Risacher and Dyson Daniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and then Okongwu and Mo Gay, as the fives. And they should be way better defensively than they are. They should be. They just should be. This should be on paper this is a top 10 defense, maybe even a top 5 defense, but they're nowhere close to that. And I think that's where, for Hawks fans, it's well, is it the personnel? Is it the coaching? What do we do here? We traded Trae Young. We got expiring contracts, CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert for the face of our franchise. This is it, and nothing's changed. We still are going to be in the play-in. Understandably so. I mean, really, they're in the worst place. They're stuck in the middle. And that's the worst place to be in the NBA. The only real silver lining for the Hawks is the fact that they could get the number 1 pick in the draft without even their own first-round pick, because they get the rights to the Pelicans or Bucks pick, whatever is better, thanks to their magnificent trade they made on draft night last year, trading down 10 spots with New Orleans. That's the real only silver lining, the light at the end of the tunnel for this current roster, is if they can get another superstar to add to this team that does have something there. And to your last point, Jason, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it was just a little too soon to expect a Jalen Johnson to be this guy on offense and also sustain energy on defense. Maybe it's a little too soon to expect Risacher to be a consistently impactful player on the floor. Maybe it was just too soon. But I do, have my questions, though, still about the personnel as a whole and about Quinn Snyder as a coach.
I think the Quinn Snyder stuff is at least worth bringing up, because I think ultimately when you see a performance like that Celtics game where they look so lifeless when they need a win, that always reflects poorly, at least on the level of buy-in. I thought the first possession of the game was the perfect example. Baylor Shireman hits a no-dip 3 in the left corner as Jaylen Jaylen Brown comes off of
no dip threes are like the sexiest shot in basketball.
I know, right? I know, yeah.
It's such a good looking shot.
And a wonderful pass too, right in the pocket. And but on the shot, like Jaylen Brown beat low man help with a chest pass, which that should never happen because there should be enough ball pressure and enough like congestion. Like if you are putting two on the ball in pick and roll, like if you have a Kongu coming up to the level, he should never be able to make a chest pass to the corner. But that is literally the level of like lack of ball pressure that Atlanta was applying, which again, that should be such an intrinsic part of their identity in terms of the way they play on defense. And so I do think it's at least worth looking in the direction of the coach when a team doesn't appear bought into what they're trying to accomplish.
All right, let's talk Lakers, Jason. Lakers fans also seem to be incredibly unhappy right now with the team losing 5 of 7 games. They're currently the 6th seed, hanging on by a thread over the red-hot Phoenix Suns ahead of the play-in right now. What's wrong, Jason? Are Lakers fans overreacting here? Help us take the temperature of Lakers fans right now.
I think most Lakers fans that I talk basketball with on a regular basis have been out on this team for a while, simply because of the fact that if you look at their starting lineup, they do not have what they consider to be the future and or a reliable playoff player at the starting 5 because DeAndre Ayton has fallen off in a significant way in the last month and change, or at the 3. And so they're just too far away from being able to put together a championship level 5. And then as you start to dig deeper into the roster, there is such a huge deficit of athleticism and jump shooting talent that it's become almost impossible for them to overcome any sort of bad performance from their stars. Their stars have to be fantastic to win games because of that lack of shooting and athleticism talent down the roster. I've been trying to come up with a metaphor for like what it's like for this team without Austin Reeves. And to me, it's like Vegas with everyone drinking way less alcohol. And then you look into it, it's like, well, the alcohol makes the clubs better. The alcohol makes the gambling better. The alcohol makes the shows better. And like when no one's drinking as much, Vegas is suffering as a result. That's kind of what it's like with Austin. Like they need shooting. He's one of their best jump shooters. They need slashing, like guys who can penetrate the defense off the dribble. Austin's literally one of their very best players in that sense. He's one of their best, like overall, like connective playmakers. Yeah, I understand this is embarrassing to say, but he's one of their best defenders too. He's one of their best rebounders at the guard position. And so you take a little bit of Austin.
It says a lot, Jason.
It says a lot, I'm saying. But if you take a little bit of Austin out of every single phase of this Lakers team, they kind of drop below this like mandatory minimum in order to be able to compete. I think the loss of him has been huge. They're 25th in the NBA in catch and shoot 3-point percentage. And then the last thing I'd say, like, there's a version of Luka when he's at his absolute best that is capable of carrying a mediocre to flawed roster to success. And Luka's just been below that level for the most part this season. His field goal percentage has not been able to come close to what he was in 2023 and 2024. His turnovers, he was below 4 turnovers a game in those 2 seasons. He's at 4.5 this season. He's starting to come around a little bit. He's been playing a little bit better in the last couple of weeks, but like with Luka operating below the level of a top tier superstar, with no Austin, with a 41-year-old LeBron James, it's just shining a giant spotlight on what is, in my opinion, a travesty of modern NBA roster construction. You need to have athleticism and shooting to succeed in the modern NBA, and Rob has somehow managed to get none of that around those guys over the last couple of years.
Is this just a bye year, as kind of hinted at ahead of the season by Pelinka, that they're thinking about 2027? Is that all this is, or is there any fixing this team?
I think that there is an outside shot if they really nail this deadline to at least kind of get into that second tier of contenders where, like, yeah, if things break right, you see them in the Western Conference Finals kind of thing. But I think championship is essentially out of the cards. And so essentially what you got to look at is if LeBron's 41, then you basically need a starting 3, a starting 4, and a starting 5 at some point in the next few years. I don't think Rui's good enough to be the starting 4. And so you have to begin the process of achieving those 3 starting spots for your long term alongside Luka. And so whatever deal gets you in that direction at this deadline, it's not even for this year's championship. You're starting to build a team that could potentially compete next year or the following year through incremental steps that can start this year. I have started to put my eye on the center position. And one of the big reasons for that is, even though I do think the Lakers desperately need perimeter athleticism, I just don't think Ayton's good enough. I think Jackson's fine as a backup center, but I don't think Ayton's good enough. And if you have a real foundational level center defensively, it makes more achievable perimeter roles. It unlocks the ability for them to run more traditional drop coverage looks that are functioning because you've got such a strong defensive foundation. So I actually think the Lakers should target the center position first and then kind of start to look towards the 3 and 4 after that. But ultimately, anything that can incrementally start to build for the future, they've got to consider at this deadline.
Who then, Jason? Who's the target at the center spot? Is that a target now? Is that a target this summer? But who's the name that you come down? Is there a dream name and a realistic name that makes sense for the Lakers?
I've been looking at a bunch of different directions. JJ Redick really likes to switch. So there's something about a Nick Claxton fit that I like, in the sense that Luka's kind of a bigger, stronger type of forward. In the short term, LeBron is bigger and stronger too. So that kind of anchors Nick being a little bit on the thinner side. He's not an elite rebounder at the center position, but he can defend in multiple different schemes pretty well and provides real rim protection, and he's a vertical spacing threat. So I wonder if you could put together a deal that gets you something like a Claxton and a Terrence Mann, and maybe you anchor a little bit of your perimeter athleticism at the same time in a deal like that. Again, I don't love the Terrence Mann contract, but at the same time, it's probably better than some of the things you've got going on your roster right now. There are a couple other options I've looked at around the league. I think anybody who could get Robert Williams for cheap would be smart to go on him. I don't think you can invest heavily in him with his health history, but I think you can look in that direction. And then the other kind of team that I secretly have my eye on, this is one for you, Kevin. What if Denver, in their pathway to have to pay Peyton Watson, decides to get off of Cam Johnson? Do you think there's like a move for the Lakers to jump in there to try to grab Cam as their starting 3, especially for a team that's really struggled to shoot the basketball? I think you'd have to convince Denver to help a rival, which is something that I don't think they'd be super thrilled to do. But if they were willing to take on the salary, the Lakers have expirings. And so that could be the pathway with which Denver could extend Peyton Watson, who's kind of looking like the small forward of the future for them.
Yeah, Peyton Watson's looking like a potential star, and Cam Johnson, solid, but looking replaceable for the Nuggets. So that is definitely probably more of a summer question for Denver than a question now. But I mean, everything you said, Jason, I agree with everything you said. Now, I think there's a segment of Lakers fans who are probably saying, you're not blaming LeBron James enough. And of course, the notorious LeBron hater on X, Apex Jones 22, posted a clip the other day of LeBron James cherry picking in transition. This is why LeBron is leading the league in fast break points. He said, notice every time 4 Lakers on defense because LeBron did not run back. As always, we point out the fraud, according to Apex Jones. Jason, I'm just curious about your reaction to this criticism of LeBron. Is it fair? Is it warranted or no?
So LeBron at this age, and it's kind of been lasting for like 3-4 years now, will have some of the most hilarious lowlights you will ever see, because he will straight up stop playing sometimes for like 2 or 3 possessions in a row. He had an example of like that the other night in the Hornets game, where you could tell he was gassed at the end of his first quarter shift. And so from like the 6-minute mark to the 4-minute mark, there were no stoppages or anything that could get LeBron out of the game. And so he just like stopped playing defense. And like you'll see some downsides like that, but talk to any Laker fan who's actually watching the Lakers on a daily basis, and they'll tell you that he's been one of their most valuable players over the last few weeks. The units that he's anchoring with Luka Doncic off the floor have been where the Lakers have been taking control of games. That was a big part of how they ended up beating Toronto as well. And so while there are a lot of lowlights in there, in the aggregate, LeBron's just been one of their most important players in every facet of the game.
I mean, I tend to agree with you here. I do think some of the criticism is fair of him. It's also just funny. It's absolutely funny. He always finds something to go at LeBron for. It's so very funny following him on social media. All right, that's enough of unhappy fan bases, Jason. Where do you want to go next? Hot stove questions or random thoughts?
Let's go to random thoughts.
Okay, let's go to random thoughts. So we saw the Lakers face the Raptors on Sunday night. They beat Toronto. Collin Murray-Boyles had a sensational game. My random thought is Collin Murray-Boyles is the next Draymond Green. Murray-Boyles had a very good start in that game, defended Luka a handful of possessions, blocked him on 3 tries. On one of the possessions, he defended him man-to-man. Luka, it was on a switch. Luka on the left wing drove, hooked Murray-Boyles on the drive to the rim, and then Murray-Boyles recovered and blocked him. Luka was calling for a goaltend. A couple plays later, Murray-Boyles and help blocked him. Luka was complaining and whining like always. And then in transition, Murray-Boyles blocked his shot from behind on a little bit of a floater, and that's something Murray-Boyles does a lot of. He blocks shots and contests shots, grabs the ball in transition. He's been wreaking havoc as a guy hustling down the floor for the Raptors on defense, not just a half-court guy, but a transition stopper as well. And he's like Draymond on offense in some ways too, because he's 6'7", 6'8", can handle the ball, loves to kick it ahead, spark transition opportunities after steals or deflections and rebounds. And then in the half court, they use him out of the short roll a lot. It's a screener. He operates in the middle of the floor. He can score off the dribble, find cutters, kick it out, find shooters. He doesn't shoot at a high volume. He's shooting around 40% from 3 on about a shot per game. But the interior game, the playmaking game, the hustle, the effort on the boards as well. Murray-Boyles, there's been a lot of players over the years, Jason, that have been compared to Draymond Green. Most of it been very unfair for those other players. It's hard to reach Draymond. But to me, Murray-Boyles is the closest thing to enter the NBA that is deserving of the Draymond Green comparison.
I'm 100% with you on this. The best evidence I could give is that last night when I was watching this game and he hurt his thumb and had to leave early, I sighed in relief because that dude was a wrecking ball that was destroying the Lakers in like every facet of the game. I think that there's I think we've seen kind of several examples of this type of player that have been really impactful. I think Mojave Gay actually is an example in Atlanta as well, where it's like kind of this tweener 4-5 that runs the floor, just plays super hard. I think an underrated kind of like area of opportunity for any team is guys who play super hard at this time of year, because there's a lot of ground that can be made up with dudes who bring natural motor, but just bringing the combination of the athletic tools and constantly playing super hard and constantly being in the right position, it allows him to essentially just function as a wrecking ball in all these different facets. I thought you did a wonderful job breaking down some of the more refined like skill things that he brings to the table. But ultimately, like when you've got a dude who's got this level of athletic tools at his disposal, who's playing as hard as he's playing every minute he's on the floor, that has the foot speed element that you don't get from a Jakob Poeltl, like that, like ability to cover ground in transition or cover ground in rotation. I just think there's a ton of value in those kinds of guys in the modern NBA. We've seen this. It's just like that tweener forward that can guard multiple positions and that rebounds really hard and that runs the floor. There's just a ton of value in the modern NBA.
100%. And last year at South Carolina, as a sophomore, their defense was terrible when he was off the floor. It's one of the worst defenses in the nation, but there were 12 or 13 points per 100 possessions on defense when he was on the floor. And you're starting to see that happen with Toronto as well. I think the latest number is over the last couple of months, 7 or 8 points per 100 possessions better on defense with Murray-Boyles on the floor versus off the floor. So he's just one of those players where when he's on the floor, makes a significant impact, and hopefully he's able to develop his shot to a higher volume over time, because he's got the defense, he's got the feel, got the playmaking, got the interior finishing, just needs to figure out that perimeter game to really optimize who can be. My next random thought here, Celtics-Pistons on Monday night is the game of the week. I am excited for this game. You know, you and I were talking before the podcast began about how there's been kind of a lull in the NBA schedule in recent weeks. This is a marquee matchup. 1 and 2 in the Eastern Conference, the 30-10 Pistons, the 26-15 Celtics. Did you see, Jason, video posted by Adam Himmelsbach on Monday morning? Jason Tatum going through a full one-on-one practice. Looked like he was at full strength, going at full speed. Tatum's coming back. It's going to happen. February or March, Tatum will return. It's going to happen, assuming like he gets all checked out. Tatum's going to come back. And so there's going to be another real threat to the Pistons and the Knicks in the Eastern Conference that comes. But this matchup tonight, Boston, Detroit, I'm very excited for. And I think it's very important for the Pistons as well, Jason, because they get some tough matchups coming up ahead of the deadline. 2 games versus Denver. Jokic might be back for one of them. Game versus Boston, a couple other games versus top teams in each conference. Detroit's close, but I think this is going to be a really good barometer test for them against one of the most high-powered offenses in the league to show what's missing, what could be exposed in the postseason for us, what do we need to get better at ahead of the February 5th deadline. Are you feeling the same way about Detroit over the next few weeks?
Yeah, I think that Detroit has this incredibly strong foundation physically that I think bodes really well for them looking forward as a playoff team. Like, when you're as good on the perimeter defensively as they are, when you're like one of their biggest margins, points in the paint, they dominate the paint on both ends of the floor because of what they do underneath the basket, offensive rebounding, and as cutters and rollers. They're plus 15 points per game every single game just in the paint. So they win so many of these margins that it kind of buys them a lot of margin for error with their half-court offense. And ultimately, that's going to be the big kind of like swing factor for them in their potential. Is right now they're a bottom half-court offense, so they're going to be able to get up to a level where they're able to go toe-to-toe with a team that slows down in the half-court with them. But they've been good enough in crunch time, especially because of how good Cade has been. I mean, that's been the story in these Celtics matchups. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to tonight, is they just have had these awesome crunch time battles. And the one Boston won, they got the stops on Cade, and the one the Pistons won, Cade's hitting crazy spin move jump shots in the lane over Derek White, right? So like that's kind of the showdown at the end of these games. But ultimately, that's what Detroit does. They drag you into the mud and they keep every game close. And so that's kind of why I've been so keyed in on like a Michael Porter Jr. for them, or something that's a scoring, shooting upgrade at the 4 spot, essentially a better version of Tobias Harris, because this is a team that, like, if they went from a bottom half-court offense to like the 10th best half-court offense, now we're talking about a team that I think is every bit as good as the top-tier championship contenders in the league. And so I think it's worth it. I think that like if you really look at last year too, like they kind of physically manhandled New York a little bit in that first round series and gave them some real problems. There's a lot that they do that translates really well to the modern NBA in the postseason. And so I think that they're worth an investment on that level. And ultimately, I think they need a 4 anyway for the big picture alongside Cade. So I think they're my favorite Michael Porter Jr. team by far. There are a lot of teams that I think could use Mike, but they're my favorite team because I think it makes the league more interesting if the Pistons have that level of upside.
I'm 100% with you. I mean, they're 27th in the NBA in 3-point attempts per game, 18th in 3-point percentage. And if they can improve there, Tobias Harris is at 33% from 3. They have Oscar Thompson playing minutes, and Ron Holland and iffy or non-shooters. That could become a problem in the postseason. I mean, they have very tradable salaries as well. They have Ivy at $10 million expiring as a restricted guy, Harris at $27 million expiring, LeVert with 2 years, $14 million annually remaining. They have young guys, Oscar Thompson, if they really wanted to put him out there, Ivy, Holland, Chaz Lanier, Marcus Sasser, Bobby Clinton. There's options, and they have all of their future picks. So they could do 4 firsts and 3 swaps. They can put stuff on the table and still have picks left over. I have 5 trade targets that I think Detroit should be angling for, Jason. I also have Michael Porter Jr. on there as well. Trey Murphy, I'd also put on the list as well. He'd probably be
great.
Bit more pricey. He'd be awesome for them in that 4 spot. Jaren Jackson Jr. out of Memphis, if the Grizzlies did trade Ja and then wanted to also move Jaren Jackson Jr., have him as a 4, ultimate lineup flexibility, maybe even flirt with playing 3 bigs. Triple J, Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren. Imagine that team on defense with all that size. Ayo Dosunmu, it's like a cheaper option from the Bulls. Slasher. He's become a 40% guy from 3 this year, a versatile defender. And then Klay Thompson, quietly having a bounce back year.
He's hooping
for the Mavericks
right now.
Yeah, he's been playing great. And so you see Duncan Robinson, the way the Pistons use him off ball, off screens, as a screener on ball as well. Klay could do all those things. And so having another guy that adds that spacing threat, I think could be very, very important for Detroit come playoff time. And there's other guys. I mean, if Minnesota made a big trade, Naz Reid would probably be the guy that would have to go out. So Detroit expressed interest in Reid last summer before he re-signed in Minnesota. So maybe a guy like him, or, I'd make a call to Atlanta and say, hey, you guys are in the middle. Are you interested in trading Nickeil Alexander-Walker? I know you just got him. I'd make a call. I don't think they're going to pick up, but I'd make a call. Jeremy Grant, reunite with him as another lower end option. Doesn't move the needle quite as much, but those are the five: Murphy, Porter, Jackson, Dosunmu, Klay Thompson. That would move me the most if the Pistons were to make a transaction for one of them. I think they should, Jason. You remember that they traded for Rasheed Wallace in 2004. They were 34-22 when they got him at the deadline. They were the third in the Eastern Conference. They were a good team. Ben Wallace was on his way to winning his second Defensive Player of the Year. Tayshaun Prince in year 2 of his career was having a breakout season. Chauncey Billups and Rip Hamilton in that backcourt. They were a fun team and felt like contenders, but they didn't stay complacent that year. They traded for Rasheed Wallace. They traded Chucky Atkinson, the rotation player, and multiple picks to go get him because they weren't complacent. And I think this year's Pistons team is in a very similar spot, and they also can't be complacent with being at the top of the East. They should go out and make a move. They should be aggressive. It's open, Jason. You got to go for it. And Detroit is in a position with all their assets and picks and salaries. It is literally the perfect storm for making a big acquisition, and they have to go for it.
Yeah, I hate when people talk about assets too as if they disappear after you make a trade. If you make a smart trade, you're getting assets back. Like
yes.
if you go get a Trey Murphy, if you go get a Michael Porter Jr., and then suddenly like Giannis becomes available next year and you want him, Michael Porter Jr. or Trey Murphy can be the centerpiece of a Giannis trade because
and
then
that
the
player
Bucks
might have more value at the time, Jason. He might have more value after he's with you.
Exactly. So like my thing is as long as you don't go, do something. I've been talking about this with the Lakers with the respect to like if it Herb Jones popped up or it, with juxtaposed with a guy like Andrew Wiggins. Like, yeah, whoever trades for Andrew Wiggins, there's a certain amount of like, if he's 32, he's not worth as much. And, maybe it becomes more complicated. But like when you get a really good player in their mid-20s, like they're worth that, whatever you pay for them, they're worth that in the next deal. And so to me, there's not really a whole lot for them to lose there. And then ultimately, I still think this conference is wide open enough to where a move like that could legitimately move them into the position of being a substantial favorite.
Absolutely, 100% true. And I think it's a similar thing for the Celtics. Tatum will return, assuming he gets, all the boxes checked by all the doctors come February or March. He will return. They also are in a position where I think adding one more big would make sense for them. Kate has been very, very good, but finding one more big man I think would make this roster feel a lot more complete. The issue with Boston is the fact that Anthony Simons has provided such a spark off the bench. He was the guy, it felt like he was by far the piece that you would trade. But Simons has been damn good, dude. He's streaky, but really good. And he can have those games that win you a playoff game. Sometimes he just straight up looks like Damian Lillard. It's just the way it is. Sometimes he looks like Dame. And so I'd be a little bit more hesitant to trade Simons than I would have been a few months ago if I were the Celtics. But this team, I've said it all year long, I think they're one of the best value bets to win the finals. Because they were like plus 5,000, plus 8,000 in some sports books earlier in the year. Just absurd odds for a team that could get Tatum back and Jaylen Brown playing at this level. Do you think I'm overrating Boston's probability of making a deep run?
No, I think Boston does enough things well that if you hit on a trade and you get Jason Tatum back, if you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference and how flawed everyone is, I think we'd be foolish to count them out. Like, I think I'd probably have them third right now behind the Knicks and the Pistons. But I think that they're right up there with that group, and I think they're certainly capable. I think they just are a little physically overwhelmed at this point. So, for instance, like just in the Detroit matchup, Detroit has grabbed 43% of their own misses against the Celtics. Like when they face some of these bigger front lines, they're just completely overwhelmed on the defensive glass in a way that I think would be really difficult to hold up over the course of a playoff series. But Jason Tatum does help with that. And if you get a bigger bruising center, I actually want to turn this back to you because like I got into a debate with some Celtics fans on my show about like what kind of center the Celtics should be hunting for. Like if you could pick a big for the Celtics to trade for, who would it be at this point?
It would have been Zubats. I mean, that was always the name that came most to mind, even though Zubats has had a bit of a downish year for the Clippers. He was the one that stood out the most. I think reuniting with Robert Williams, Time Lord, would make some sense as well as a cheaper alternative for Boston. But I think Zubats is the one that's come most to mind. Do you have somebody that makes sense for them?
I didn't love any of the options because of the trick that you're mentioning with the salaries. Like, how are you going to pay this center for the long run? That's why I started to look at like some kind of like what if you traded for a guy like Vooch and then kept him at a big discount in the late phase of his career? You know what I mean? Like essentially like you bring him in and you re-sign him after this for something that's like a 3-year, $15 million deal, something like that, where like Vooch's late career, probably not going to get a bunch of money somewhere else anyway. He can run, pick and pop and space the floor. He anchors you on the defensive glass and gives you a post-up threat against switches. Like, I wonder if they have to look at flawed options specifically for the discount. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I think similarly, it could be a guy like a Day'Ron Sharpe from the Nets or a Nick Richards from the Suns, like somebody in that stratosphere. I think could make some sense. Last week on my podcast, I think it was Haberstroh or Sharp, I forget who said it. They mentioned Daniel Gafford, but that like speaks to the financial aspect. That's a little bit difficult for them as well. But these teams are close. Boston and Detroit are very close. And I hope to see these teams be aggressive when it goes forward. Speaking of trades, our final category is hot stove questions. So let's go with Ja Morant, who made his return on Sunday. He had 24 points and 13 assists in 28 minutes in a Grizzlies win in London against the Orlando Magic. Is Ja Morant's stock rising? Because you look at the numbers, Jason, the first 12 games of the season, Ja Morant was not getting to the basket. Only 18% of his shots came at the rim. He was settling for threes and mid-rangers. 51% of his shots came from mid-range. 31% of his shots came from three. His last 7 games, ever since he came back from his calf injury, 34% of his shots have come from the rim. Only 19% of his shots have come from three. He's scoring 28.1 points per 36 minutes on a 58% true shooting. That is very close to what he did in his 2 All-Star seasons combined, the 2022 and 2023 seasons, when he averaged 29.6 points per 36, took only 29% of his shots at the rim, took only 29% of his shots from three. Shot distribution and shot efficiency is looking very comparable. And forgetting about the stats, the eye test, when you look at the video, Ja just looks better. He looks more explosive. He looks more like the Ja Morant of the past. And so I'm not saying Ja is back to all-star Ja Morant. I'm not saying that. But have we seen enough to feel like Ja Morant's stock is at least risen to a point that other teams might go like, why not just roll the dice and take a risk on a buy low opportunity here?
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned the athleticism piece, because when I was watching him earlier this year, I'm like, doesn't even look like Ja athletically, let alone, there's the obvious jump shooting criticism. Like he goes 5 for 8 on jump shots last night. That has been the pivot point in his career. Instead of getting better at it every year, he's gotten worse at it every year. And that has been the thing that has prevented him from making that like next leap in his development. But when Ja's healthy, and I agree with you, I don't think he's looked quite like the early years in this recent stretch, but he is looking better in terms of his ability to get dribble penetration and get all the way to the basket. That is the foundational trait that has always made him so exciting, is he can beat anybody off the dribble, and he's got the short range shot making piece and playmaking piece to counter it. You can just pop up off the ground from 5 feet and hit a floater at a high percentage, and that gives him an over the top shot. It mattered more than the 3-point shot anyway. It just was he could never stay healthy and athletic long enough to be that guy often enough for it to matter. My thing is like, he's worth a risk for a team that can afford to take a risk. And this is why I keep looking at Miami and I go, this just makes sense to me. Like, Miami is a team that needs somebody that can provide more reliable dribble penetration. I know Ja didn't like this system in Memphis, but I thought Memphis played some of their best basketball when they were playing that system. So, like, I think Ja, as the guy who could initially break the defense with dribble penetration, makes a ton of sense in Miami and their system. I think the type of culture that Miami brings to the table could be good for Ja, just putting him around a bunch of, and for the record, Memphis deserves more credit. They're a very serious organization as well, but Miami at least can provide that and a change of scenery. So it can maybe signify some sort of like fresh kind of change in that sense. But like, the only teams that make sense for Ja are the teams that can afford to flame out with him. And Miami's going nowhere, so it makes some sense. I've even looked at Milwaukee too. Like, if you wanted to do something crazy to try to keep Giannis around, you could look in that direction, even though the fit with Giannis is just putrid, obviously. But like, it has to be somebody that can take a risk.
Why is the fit so bad with Giannis, in your opinion?
I'm always concerned about a star pairing where both guys like to drive and neither guy likes to shoot. I think we saw that with the LeBron and Wade thing back in the early 2010s, even to a certain extent. Like, you just have to create so much space around them. Now, I think Milwaukee actually does shoot the ball reasonably well. The other thing too is, like, I think there's a little bit of like a Kevin Porter Jr. pounds the air out of the basketball thing that can slow down Milwaukee's offense, and I think Ja would do more of the same. I also really like Ryan Rollins, and I'd be really concerned about disrupting his development trajectory by bringing in a guy like Ja Morant. But ultimately, if you're trying to keep Giannis, it's that type of risk. But I have a hard time coming up with other teams, Kevin, that like legitimately make sense for Ja as a team that can afford to take the risk.
Yeah, it's a team like the Kings where it's like, screw it. Why not?
Whatever.
26 years old. We'll take a swing. We might miss. So what? Let's just try to get a star in our organization and see what happens. But I do think Miami is probably the team that would rank first of makes sense for situation with what their needs are. And plus, Spoelstra has run a bit more pick and rolls the last month or so, as Nekias Duncan outlined recently over on the dunker spot. So I think, Spoelstra is going to run a little bit of a hybrid system with their, no screens, the movement and the cutting, the Noah LaRoche offense, and with more traditional pick and roll. The one thing I will say about Miami is I have heard the Grizzlies don't want Tyler Hero, so it would have to be some type of other deal involving Miami. So, or Hero would have to go to a third team, I would think. But we'll see. If Ja continues playing and continues having big games, I think you'll see more teams have interest. What's your thoughts on Ja after that game in London where he said, you know what I want? I'm loyal. I have a Grizzlies tattoo on my back. It really it doesn't jive with what we've heard otherwise, Jason, that Ja is open to being moved, that the Grizzlies and his interests are mutual. Do you think that we could be seeing just a young player changing emotions here? Or is that just him just trying to save face with fans and saying, I want to be here?
Yeah, I think it's the textbook example of like, no one actually thinks that it looks good to ask for a trade. Like, there's no version of this that looks good optically for Ja. So he's got to try to twist it in some way, shape, or form. I mean, the bottom line is like, beyond there have been attitude issues, there's been buy-in issues. Like, there's a reason like the Grizzlies play a certain way when Ja's not on the floor. Thomas LaSalle is trying to get them to play a certain way when Ja's off the floor. And like, I think just in general, the entire franchise culturally and philosophically in terms of the way they want to play basketball is shifting away from Ja. We all know it. He knows it. It's all just a game they're playing in terms of controlling the optics.
I think that's 100% true. I mean, almost everybody else in the Grizzlies plays fast with decision makings. Ja, for as speedy and as quick as he is, things slow down when he's on the floor and when he has the ball in his hands. And if he could only just lean into that quickness in a different type of way, maybe it could work. But ultimately, they do seem to be moving away from Ja Morant in that past era. Next up in our hot stove questions, do the Wolves actually need to make a trade? Now, this question's been on my mind, Jason, because I watched Anthony Edwards against the San Antonio Spurs look like Stephen Curry. Dropped 55 points, just hitting three-pointer, contested off the dribble, coming off a movement. He looked absolutely sensational, bringing the Wolves back into that game, even though they ended up losing it at the end against San Antonio. Now, the reason why this thought's on my mind is because with the Wolves, it's been a lot of questions. Do they need a point guard? Do they need another ball handler? Should they go for Ja Morant? The way Anthony Edwards is playing, I'm not quite certain that they need that. And the other question with Minnesota is about the big man spot, because they've been horrible defensively without Rudy Gobert out there. This season, they have a 107.2 defensive rating when Gobert is on the floor, a 118.4 defensive rating when he's off the floor. They also allow a bit more shots at the rim when Gobert is off the floor. But in that game, Jason, without Rudy Gobert, we saw Yohan Berenger, their rookie center, get an opportunity. He had 3 blocks in the game, or 2 blocks in the game. One of them was more of a real shot alteration that didn't go. But he played 20 minutes for the second time in 3 games, made a case for more minutes, more consistent minutes, altered a ton of shots, even had a play versus Wemby where Wemby almost dunked on him. But Berenger was there. He made it a tough attempt for Victor Wembanyama. He always plays hard. He created an opportunity for the Wolves to get a shot on the other end of the floor, gave Minnesota the lead. I just think with you look at the numbers, it's a very small sample with Berenger. 71 minutes where he's been in the only big of the floor. They have a 101.1 defensive rating. 43 minutes when Berenger has shared the floor with either Julius Randle or Naz Reid. They have a 100.1 defensive rating. With Gobert on the floor with either Randle or Naz Reid, which has been the far majority of their minutes this season, the Wolves have a 105.9 defensive rating. Dominant. With no Gobert or no Berenger, so the Naz Reid minutes, the Julius Randle minutes, or the minutes with both of them, the Wolves have a 123.3 defensive rating, which is horrible. They need to solve that in order to make a deep run in the playoffs. My thing is, what if the solve is just Yohan Berenger getting minutes? And so this all comes back to the question, do the Wolves actually need to make a trade? What if the solutions are internal, Jason? What if it's just higher usage Ant because of the leap he's taken? What if it's just giving your rookie big man Yohan Berenger more minutes? Are the solutions actually internal for Minnesota?
I think so. I am super high on Minnesota. I agree with you. I don't think they need to make a trade at all. I think they need to lean into continuity more than anything else. I will say the Randle Reid groups have defended a little better as of late, and they've had some good runs in some recent games where they've played really well. But Berenger, to me, is a very nice stopgap in the sense that whether it's a night like last night or 2 nights ago where Naz Reid hurts his shoulder and he's out, or Rudy Gobert's got a bruised hip, or to your point, like on a night where the Randle Reid groups just aren't defending and you need to go with a different look in the second half, I'm all for pushing his minutes more and seeing it, especially in the long run, if he can become a Gobert replacement ultimately as the years go by. He does all the things that you need in terms of there. Like, to me, there's like big man stuff that's like ceiling stuff, and then there's like floor stuff. And the ceiling stuff is like, can you shoot? Can you run 5-out offense as a passing fulcrum at the top of the key? Can you play one-on-one? Like, can you score in the post or like turn and face and ISO the way Jalen Duren does? Like, those are all like ceiling raising things. Like super switchy on the perimeter, that'd be a ceiling raising thing. But like for a floor for a center, it's like you got to run the floor really well, which Berenger does. You got to set good screens. He's clearly been learning from Rudy. He's been setting very good screens. You got to roll hard. And then you got to be able to run some sort of traditional drop coverage with size where you can bother guards coming downhill in the mid-range and bother guys at the rim. And I thought he bothered some jump shooters in that Spurs game too, with his length. And so I think ultimately he does all the things you need to have a high floor at the center position, which means he's absolutely capable of being a rotation level big right now. And so to your point, pushing it on nights when guys are out of the lineup and then using it as a counter when the Randle Reid groups don't play super well on the defensive end, I'm all for it. I'm super high on Minnesota though, Kevin. They will have these stretches like that second quarter against San Antonio where they just don't play defense. And that can be so maddening at times. But ultimately, this team can ratchet things up with their physicality at all their position groups and reach a level defensively while providing the rim protection with Gobert and then obviously Berenger in certain groups that I think can really cause teams problems. And then they have, I think, a lot of aggregate offensive talent that's played together a long time now and has built some real continuity. Like, Ant's awesome. Julius has been around for a year and a half. Naz Reid is awesome. Like, when they won that game against the Thunder a few weeks back, and you're seeing like Naz Reid's posting up J-Dub, hitting the lefty hook off the glass and getting an offensive rebound put back, and Julius Randle's bullying post-ups and creating shots, and Ant's hitting shots, and like Dante DiVincenzo makes a big play here or there. Like, they have what I think you need in order to beat the top teams in the league, which is big physical defensive personnel at every position with scheme versatility, and then a depth of big shot creators, and all of them can shoot. And that's why the improvements from like guys like Jaden McDaniels matter so much. Like, I think, yeah, it gets a little tricky when you get into their deep bench, but I think Jalen Clark is going to be fine for a guy that can play one shift per half when they get into the postseason. He's actually been a big part of why they've been better defensively as of late with Reed and Randall on the floor. They've just started putting him with those guys. Yes, it's like, be better at the point of attack. Be better at the point of attack. You don't have to be as good.
And good helper, too. He does it all.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, like, yeah, I'm huge on Minnesota. Like, by the way, I'm going to be having you on my show here in a couple of weeks to do contender rankings, and I can't wait to debate that with you. But I have Minnesota as a top tier contender. Like, I think they're legitimately every bit as good as the top teams in the league.
And I agree with you. I mean, I think they have all the pieces. And that's why, like, with these teams at the top, sometimes you're just poking holes and figuring out, well, what could be the Achilles heel for us come postseason time. And I think the big man spot has been one of the questions with them. I think Byron J is going to play more, and we seem to both agree there. Point guard spot, I think it would be a mistake to go for Ja Morant. It's funny, like last week, I think it was during the episode I did with Andrew Sharp, I posted a fake trade about, hey, here's a fake trade for the Wolves to go get Ja Morant. And Wolves fans are like, you're an idiot. Like, you're a fool. It's like, I also don't think this is a good trade. I agree. This is like this is not clickbait. It's not rage bait. It was just, here's what a trade would look like.
Here's an option.
That's it. That's all it was. And me and Sharp had a nice, measured discussion about how it was a bad idea. He said it was the best version of a bad idea. I agreed. We thought it would be better to go for like a Scottie Pippen level point guard from Memphis, not Ja Morant, and all that. So anyway, I think that is the place where if Minnesota does make a trade, it's finding somebody better than Mike Conley. As much as I might love Mike Conley, he's awesome. I hope he's able to stay in Minnesota. I would love to see him win a championship. It would be awesome. That's the place they need to upgrade. Finding a guy who can be better defensively than he is, who provides more size and still maintain the shooting and connective playmaking that Conley still brings to the floor at his advanced age. I think if there's any trade to be made, that's the spot. It's upgrading over Conley, Jason. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I say don't make a trade, I mean, like, don't do anything big and aggressive that's super high risk. Like, there's not a team in the league that shouldn't be looking for a marginal positional upgrade at a key rotation spot if it makes sense in terms of your asset expenditures, right? Like, yeah, like if that was Keon Ellis instead of Mike Conley, the Wolves are a better team. Like, there's no point in like pretending like we can't, make those kinds of marginal
Keon
upgrades.
Ellis.
But yeah, I do.
That's a pretty good idea, Jason. Keon Ellis. I'm into that.
Well, it's to the point that you're making, like a guy who can guard a little bit, knock down an open three, drive a closeout. He can, just basic stuff at that position.
Yeah, I like that Keon Ellis idea. And obviously the assets are part of it. I'm sure the Wolves would love to find a taker for Rob Dillingham. To me, that's the salary, $6 million. If they can turn Dillingham into something, that's the place to trade him, not Mike Conley. I want to keep Conley on the team for vibes, for energy, and that veteran presence. But ultimately, I mean, like what we talked about with Detroit, the position that they're in, with Boston, it's really true with all these contenders. But with Minnesota, the fact Anthony Edwards continues ascending every single year and getting better. I mean, look, the Wolves lost that game, but like that was amazing. He looked like Stephen Curry. He looked like Steph with some of the shots he hit, Jason. It was unbelievable watching him just go lights out. You could see him when he was like, backpedaling back onto the defense after hitting those shots, just like the look on his face. He knew he was feeling it. He knew he was on fire. It's like, this guy is amazing. And the Wolves need to find the right pieces around this guy to take advantage of the roster that they have, with Gobert still at a defensive player of the year level, Randall having an all-star caliber season, this depth, and Edwards emerging again, having another leap. This team's close, dude. They're really close.
This guy is the great hope, Kevin, for a fun to watch American star that is actually capable of going toe to toe with these other dudes from around the world. And like, I'll just be straightforward with you. Like, when LeBron retires, he's going to be my favorite player. Like, I like, not to take it to that crazy debate last week about whether or not people who work in the media can be fans. Like, I think we're all fans. Like, I think anytime you watch a player in any sport, you either watch him and you go, I like that guy, or you go, not my favorite. Like, it's usually what it's like. Mm-hmm. And like, to me, I watch Ant and I just absolutely love his game. I love his attitude. I love his demeanor. I just, the biggest thing with him as a basketball nerd that I love is the combination of unbelievable, transcendently great shooting ability with transcendently great athleticism. You know, when you look back through some of the great shooters in NBA history, like Clay had good size, but not an apex athlete. Steph had great quickness, but not great size or vertical athleticism. Ray Allen, towards the tail end of his career, when he was more of just a specialist three-point shooter, wasn't a terrific athlete at that point in time. We're watching what it would look like if like Michael Jordan and Klay Thompson like combined and formed into this like super basketball player. Like it just is unbelievable to watch because I didn't even talk about footwork, which is how you actually get to your spots. You basically can't stop him from getting to a pull-up jump shot. You can't. So once he elevates, like, it's just a question of whether or not it goes in. And so that's why he can go on these crazy shot making runs where it's just like you're just there praying that he misses, and he's just not going to. It was his 7th 40-point game of the season. He had 9 all season last year. We have 39 games left, and he's got 7 40-point games already. Like, he's just an unbelievable player, Kevin. I think he's one of the great shows in the world right now, like where we have some stars at the top of the league, mainly Shea and Luka, who the half dozen times a game are driving directly into a defender's chest and throwing up a fake basketball shot to get to the foul line. Ant's playing like a very aesthetically pleasing brand of basketball. I just think he's one of the great shows on earth right now.
100%. And I'll tell you what, Jason, with the new All-Star Game tournament that they're having with the 2 Team USA teams, Team World, and then the rookie sophomore winner, that USA team that has Ant on it, they're going to be the team that I think has a better chance, regardless of what the rest of the roster looks like, that has a better chance to take down Team Worlds, whatever team Ant is on, because he's going to go out there with an energy, trying to prove something. And that's what we need. That's why the NBA, I think, is in the right to go with this Team World versus USA rosters. The tournament aspect, we'll see how it goes. I look forward to being there for that. Are you going to LA for All-Star Weekend?
No, my company has not done All-Star related events before, but I think we're going to start. So hopefully in the next couple of years, I'll get out to an All-Star game, but I haven't actually been to one yet. Yeah,
I mean, it's a surprisingly long flight from Colorado to get to LA. Colorado's way out there.
Yeah, it's I noticed that too when I moved out here. I'm like, oh, we're like smack dab in the middle of the United States. It feels like in a lot of ways.
I don't know, for some reason,
I live on the Great Plains now, Kevin.
Yeah, exactly. You really do. I mean, I like growing up in Mass, I always imagined like Denver and like Colorado was West Coast. It's really not. It's in the middle of the country.
Yeah. And I moved here for snow, and there's been no snow, Kevin.
Really? Are you serious?
It's the lowest snowpack in the history of the state. Dead last.
Way. Wow.
I'm dead serious. Yeah. And so I have 7 ski days in this year, but I was hoping to be more like 20. So it's been kind of disappointing, but we'll see. So hopefully it gets better in the coming weeks.
Expectations. Huh. We just got I don't know, like 8 to 10 inches of snow last night in Massachusetts. It's beautiful outside. You know, when the snow first falls, that's when it looks just glorious, heavenly.
Oh my God. Like. So we woke up to snow this morning, and it's been like probably the 4th time since we moved here that's happened. And that's been a really unusual thing for me growing up in Arizona. Like, that just was not a thing that we dealt with. So like it's definitely been an interesting experience. You go to take the dogs on a walk and you're like, oh, okay, got to put my boots on. We'll get all dressed up for this.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. You have like certain pants. It's like it's a snow outfit, and you got to shovel your way out.
The dogs are going to make a mess. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you some dogs hate the snow, they don't want to go for their walks in the snow. They're unwilling to. So yeah, it's a whole thing with the snow. It's beautiful, but also disgusting in some ways. I'm
Yeah.
sure I'm sure part of you will be missing Arizona soon enough.
Oh, Arizona this time of year is so beautiful, but I'll be reaping the other side of that in the summertime. So
Yes, exactly. 100%. Denver, beautiful place. Denver and Colorado in general would be on my list of places I'd consider living. Jason, thank you so much for joining me today, man. Please let people know where they could find all your stuff. I know you're doing more than just Hoops Tonight this season.
yeah, so obviously Hoops Tonight on YouTube, and then wherever you get your podcasts. I'm most active on Twitter at _JasonLT. It's where I post, show announcements and stuff like that. And then I'm doing the All NBA pod with Adam Mares on Fridays. That one's been a lot of fun. I really like Adam, really enjoy working with him. And then Lakers Collective twice a week, just doing basically what I used to be doing before I was covering the league, just kind of focusing on the Lakers specifically with Jovan Buha and Trevor Lane. Those guys are awesome. We do some really fun shows over there. But Kevin, dude, it's always such a pleasure to see you. It was fun just talking some guitar stuff before the recording too. And I am very excited to have you on the show here in a couple of weeks to do contender rankings. I always think it's fun to just kind of dive into like who's going to win the title. And I haven't gotten your take on that yet this year. So I'm really excited to do that too.
I'm very excited to go on your show, Jason. Thanks for joining me today. And thank you to everybody watching us live on YouTube. I'll be live again on Thursday with Tom Haberstroh. Looking forward to that with Tom. If you are still watching us live, please give us a like and subscribe to Yahoo Sports NBA. That's where you can find all of my podcasts, the video versions. That's where you'll find the Dunker Spot and the Big Number as well. And plus, we got some video breakdowns coming as well. We just hit 1K subs. Let's go for 2K. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. After I got done recording with Jason Timpf, the NBA announced the All-Star starters in the Western and Eastern Conference. Out East, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jaylen Brown, Jalen Brunson, Cade Cunningham, and Tyrese Maxey. And then in the West, Stephen Curry, Luka, SGA, Jokic, and Wemby. No real big surprises here in the East. I'm very happy to see that Tyrese Maxey got this honor because it wasn't a certainty he'd get the nod here with this vote, but I think it's totally deserving. 30 points per game this season for the Sixers, but not only just a scorer, not just a playmaker, but he's been so good defensively as well, having the best defensive season of his entire career for Philadelphia. And so it's great to see him get this honor on the team. Jalen Brunson getting the honor, no surprise. Cade Cunningham, not at all. Same with Giannis and Jaylen Brown. I think a lot of people, if not most people, clearly had them on their ballots. And then in the Western Conference, I'm not going to make any real big arguments here. Luka, no surprise. SGA, no surprise. Jokic, no surprise. But I do think Anthony Edwards deserved to be a starter over either Steph Curry or Victor Wembanyama, averaging almost 30 points per game, shooting over 40% from three on over 8 attempts per game. The dude has been just absolutely lights out on the offensive end of the floor, having the most efficient high-volume scoring season of his entire career, and he's been really good defensively as well. The Wolves are nowhere without him. I think Ant deserved this honor, but ultimately, again, I'm not going to argue too hard here with these choices because nobody's going to remember if the player was a starter or if they came off the bench when it came to this vote 2 months from now. It just doesn't matter. Even next month, it's really not going to matter too much at all either, considering the fact that these starters voted on aren't actually the clear starters on the teams. It's going to be different this year because we get the 2 American teams and the 1 global team competing in a round robin tournament. It's going to be a bit different than last year than when we saw the G League and young NBA players team face off and get an opportunity to face the All-Stars. This year, it's just those 3 teams with the global team and the 2 American teams. They're going to face off and then have a championship matchup as well. So this tournament is going to be a bit different. The NBA hasn't even announced yet how they're going to determine those rosters. I'm sure we'll find out some more clarity depending on who the coaches choose as the reserves, because that stays the same here. It's still going to be 24 players, 12 from the East, 12 from the West, and the coaches are going to choose those reserves. And the biggest question of all of those choices is going to be in the West. LeBron James not voted a starter for the first time in 21 straight seasons. And so he's on the bubble, hasn't played a lot of games, a lot of competition in the Western Conference. I'm sure the NBA is somehow going to find a way to get LeBron James in the All-Star game, especially with this brand new global, America versus the world style tournament. But it's not a guarantee he's chosen right away as the coaches. So that's the big question lingering right now. I look forward to seeing who the reserves are that get chosen. That's always more interesting to me than the starters, but we get a new tournament this year. I'm hopeful that it's going to be exciting. We'll see what happens. Up next, I got Justin Boone. If you want to stay around for some NFL playoff talk, Justin and I got into the divisional round of the playoffs, which was awesome, with 2 overtime games. We previewed the conference championship games between the Seahawks and the Rams and the Patriots and Broncos. Can't wait for this weekend. Justin and I got into it. That's coming up right now. All right, let's talk some football with another edition of 6 Points, since it's the NFL playoffs at this point. And joining me from Yahoo Sports Fantasy, Justin Boone. Justin, how are you?
I've been better. I'm not going to lie, KOC. I've been better. The Bills knocked out of the playoffs in heartbreaking fashion. I should be used to that by now, but it happened again. That just when they started to make me believe a little bit the week before with that win over the Jags. I'm sure we'll talk about the Bills in a minute here, because we got some more news today that Sean McDermott, wake up to the news that Sean McDermott is out as the Bills head coach. Just really, really tough times right now. I think the change was necessary, but I started to wonder whether this was all done on purpose, because we set this up a while ago. But did you have the foresight here to go, hey, I'm going to get him on the day when everything goes wrong for the Bills, when they fire their head coach and the Patriots are just cruising into the AFC Championship game against a team that doesn't even have their starting quarterback? We are going in completely opposite directions right now in terms of our NFL fandom. But no, it's great to be back on with you, man. It's great to have a ton of stuff to talk about. I mean, 2 more overtime games in the playoffs. We've got a bunch of really close, really exciting games the first 2 weeks. It's been awesome, right? Even though the Bills aren't getting it done for me this year like I had hoped, but it's just a great time to be a football fan. We've had some really fun games and got a few more to go still before it's all over.
It's been an unbelievable playoffs. And no, I did not plan this, actually. I won't joke and act like I did. I was actually hoping for the opposite. I was rooting for the Bills to win, so we would get a Patriots-Bills rematch after, of course, New England won their first matchup earlier in the year, and then the Bills had an amazing comeback in the second one. I was hoping for a rematch. We did not get it. Instead, we did get a Broncos 33-30 victory over the Bills in overtime, and we will start with the latest news. The Bills fired their head coach, Sean McDermott. Let's start right there. Justin, you're a Bills fan. Is this the right decision to fire McDermott?
It is, but I think we got to provide some context to it, because I don't think it's the right decision in terms of McDermott being a bad coach. I don't think it's like he lost the locker room, which is normally the reason why you would get rid of your coach, right? Most teams, they're struggling. One of those two things happened, and now you're going to move on and find someone else. I don't think that's the case at all. I think this feels like this version of the Bills team, they had their shot, right? They've won a lot of games. Let's face it, like McDermott has been a winning coach. He's helped turn this team around, but they just never made it over the hump. And we have seen this happen other times with successful teams where they can't get over the hump. I mean, everyone always thinks back to like Andy Reid with the Eagles, right? Like where eventually the team just decides we're going to move on. And in that scenario, it's worked out, right? Reid went on to win a Super Bowl. The Eagles have won a Super Bowl since. Let's hope that this is the start of that for Buffalo, and they're going to bring somebody else in who is going to help them get over that hump. But I think that's really why it needed to happen. It's just they couldn't go into next season with this same crew without making some sort of change here. And it's unfortunate that it's McDermott that's the one that actually, has to take the fall for it, because again, I don't know that this is really his fault. I would put a lot more blame on their general manager, on Brandon Beane, on the quality of the players that were out there at some of those key positions.
He got a promotion, Justin.
I know. When I first saw the news, I was like, okay, they'll keep him on for now, and then a little later in the off season, they'll make the change. And maybe that's maybe they'll move him into one of these different roles where he's gotten another title. But yeah, it sure looks like he has set himself up well, and unfortunately had to get rid of McDermott in the process. So yeah, that's bad. I look at the situation, and I think the Bills really looked at it like this as well, where this was the season that with McDermott as the head coach, you just needed a couple bounces to go your way. And this year, with no Mahomes, with no Lamar, with no Joe Burrow, I think they probably felt like this was the one, right? We're going to get a couple bounces. Josh Allen's going to do his Superman thing, and that's going to be enough to get us there. And I mean, they weren't far off. They were right in this game. It wasn't like they got blown out. If a player or two had gone their way, they could have won this game, and then we would have been talking about a great AFC Championship matchup with the Bills and Patriots. But it didn't happen. We saw the sadness, we saw the disappointment from the players, and yeah, I really hope that they can now bring in an offensive coach, because I think we got to just get over it and look towards the future. And there's a lot of really exciting, offensive minds out there. Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks. Mike McDaniel, I think, would be interesting. I still have a lot of faith in him. I think he's a pretty good coach. Brian Dable, who has ties to the Bills. We know what he did there. So I think they're going to end up going that way with it, bring in an offensive guy. But it really also comes down to, can they fill these really important positions? Can they get more of a pass rush? I know they tried to, pick up guys on the line. They brought in a guy like Joey Bosa. But in this game, like not even getting a sack on Bo Nix. In the first game of the playoffs, just one sack on Trevor Lawrence. You need more from that pass rush. And then the obvious one being the receiving core, right? It's embarrassing. Matt Harmon and I in the fantasy forecast around mid-season, I brought up the fact that I thought the Bills were in the conversation for the worst receiving core in the league, which is pretty bad when you're hoping to be a contender. And, it was up against teams like the Raiders and the Browns. And I still stand by the fact that, like, if they're not the worst, they're probably top 3 in terms of being the worst. And that's just so embarrassing. They should have made a move at the deadline. This team needed something on either side of the ball. Bring in a new piece, get that excitement going, that extra push. And the fact that there were so many receivers out there like Jacoby Myers and Rashid Shaheed, who we're seeing make big plays for the Seahawks right now, just really disappointing that they didn't get that done. And again, I want to say that I do think it's the right move to move on from McDermott and look elsewhere and try to get something new going. I just feel bad because I think McDermott is still a good coach. And if I was the Tennessee Titans right now, I would be on the phone. I would have him in Tennessee, and I would bring him in immediately to provide some stability for that franchise and hopefully turn things around the way he did in Buffalo.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is a good coach, but maybe not the right coach for this team to take the leap. How much regret do you think John Harbaugh might feel for taking that Giants job ahead of this Bills job opening up?
Yeah, you wonder if he would have, felt differently. And maybe, he did wait to see if they potentially lost in the wild card game, right? Like, and I think there was a couple jobs that could have been out there depending what happened wild card weekend, but the Bills moved on. And yeah, he found his new home. There was a few spots where the quarterback position, at least in my mind, is solidified. And I think Harbaugh ended up with one of them. Like Jackson Dart, I think the Giants have a lot of great pieces on that team already. And I think that's going to be a pretty quick turnaround in terms of them being potential playoff contenders next year, because I do think Jackson Dart is the answer. And I think Harbaugh did his homework before he took that job. But yeah, if he had it to do over, this is definitely the best job out there. And you could walk in sort of like we saw Vrabel do with New England, right? You walk in, you already have your quarterback set up, you already have some good pieces, and then you just have to get your ducks in a row. And guess what? Boom, you are in contention right away. And we saw it happen in New England. I hope it happens for Buffalo, that, it only takes 1 year and right back next year in the mix and potentially competing for a Super Bowl. But we'll see. We'll see. Today is not the day when we're going to talk about the Bills being Super Bowl contenders in 2026. Definitely not.
Well, I mean, I think the catch controversy, the interception controversy at the end of the game certainly has dominated a lot of the conversation. Wasn't an interception, wasn't a catch, and so on. I think it's overshadowed a bit of the Josh Allen criticism. The turnovers that he had in that game, at the end of the first half, Justin, running around recklessly with the ball hanging out of his hands, looked like Russell Westbrook, just being absolutely careless. Multiple interceptions. He missed badly on some big throws. He missed Knox at the end of the fourth quarter, missed Shakir on a screen. And even on that play with Cooks, it was a long throw, but a slight underthrow nonetheless to Cooks that gave the defender time to catch up and make a great play. Is the criticism of Josh Allen warranted after this performance?
I mean, we always know that quarterbacks, win or lose, are going to get a ton of the blame or a ton of the hype for whatever happens. And often it's too much. In Allen's case, when this team is winning, it normally is because of him and because he's, doing those superhero type things in order to get this team there. Going back to, me talking about the receiving core kind of being subpar, and it kind of forces his hand into being that kind of player. I do think in this game, we can give a little bit of criticism to him in terms of being reckless with the ball and the turnovers and some of the things that we saw early in his career. I think especially that one before the half, right? Like that was the one that was just so inexcusable. Like, what are we doing there? I know he's trying to make a play, but come on, man. Like, you can't give the ball up in that position where they can turn around and get a quick field goal. And of course, everything would have been different, but you look at those 3 points and that field goal and say, man, that could have made a difference in the game, right? Even that one little thing that happened before the half. And Buffalo still had their shot, right? They came out there, they got the lead in the second half, so we can't totally pin it on that. But I think because of the way this team is set up, you don't have a lot of situations where Josh Allen can have a less than perfect kind of game and this team ends up winning, right? You don't have a lot of games, especially in the playoffs for Buffalo, where Allen goes out, has a bad game, and we talk about, oh, the defense picked him up, or the receiving core, or maybe James Cook can have a good game, and he certainly had some. But normally when James Cook has a good game and Josh Allen doesn't, it's like the Browns game earlier this year, where Josh Allen just didn't need to, right? They just put the ball in James Cook's hands, and Josh Allen didn't need to put up many stats for them to kind of just cruise to the win and play it safe. So that's, I think, the frustrating part here. And that's the reason why I'm not going to be too hard on Josh Allen. I mean, we see he's being quite hard on himself, right? He's out there crying in front of the media, and his teammates are finding out about that. And then they're crying because they don't feel like it's his fault. And I think that's what it comes down to here, which is just this guy does so much to put this team in the position that it's in to even be a potential contender that, yeah, he had a bit of a down game, but that's the opportunity where we should see the rest of the team step up. And I just don't think the Bills are constructed that way. And you could look no further than your Patriots, right? And Drake May, who had a bunch of turnovers this week, and yet the defense steps up. He makes a couple plays and boom, they're right there. But like Josh Allen this week, like 283, 3 touchdowns, 66 rushing yards. Like the guy is still the engine of that offense. So it's hard for me to put too much of the blame on him. And I still look around at the rest of this roster. And yes, they do have some injuries. Yes, it would have been nice to have a couple of those players out there, but still, they needed more talent around him. The defense needs to come through late in games, and they had a pretty good season, especially against the pass. But when you think about these playoff games, late in these contests, when there's a chance to shut down that opposing team, they're driving, there's a key third down or fourth down, the defense is just not coming up with those plays. And we saw it in this game multiple times where the Bills defense could have shut this thing down and they didn't. And we keep seeing Josh Allen sitting on the bench, taking the beanie off and going, all right, I got to do it again. And he can't always do it, right? You can't always expect that this guy's going to come through at the end of the game and win it for you. And it's unfortunate. And this is like pure torture that we're starting off with all this Bills talk, but I'm here for it, KLC.
I mean, it's kind of a little bit of a therapy session for you, Justin. That's what we've had to turn this into. But I mean, look, I think you're right. I was critical of Josh Allen after the game. I do think some of those turnovers were unforgivable. It reminded me of the young Josh Allen, as you mentioned. But I think you're right. He doesn't deserve all of the criticism. It's in part, especially on the front office, talked about that midseason. As you said, it's been a running theme with you and Matt Harmon as well. They have a horrible receiving core. They had an opportunity to make improvements. They didn't do it. It bit them in the ass here in the postseason, not having those reliable options, guys who can pick up the slack. You said with Drake May, he had a pretty rough game himself against the Texans, but other guys stepped up to make up for that. The defense did. Stevenson's made some good plays on offense as well. And the Patriots end up winning that game 28-16 in a win against the Texans. They will go on to face the Broncos in the AFC Championship game. Now, Drake May struggled in that game. Ball security, he was sloppy. He got stripped from behind, didn't really feel the pressure from that left side. The Patriots also were very inconsistent. They were 4th in the NFL this year in success rate. 47% is only 31% against the Texans. So what's your confidence level in Drake May from what you've seen with him against some of these stiffer defenses to go into Denver and beat the Broncos on the road?
It's still really high. I mean, who doesn't struggle against the Texans defense, right? I think we have to kind of adjust for the opponent a little bit there. Like, that defense has been fierce this year. It's been really scary. We even saw Josh Allen struggle against them earlier this season, right? Like, they were kind of putting everybody on their back foot. So it's not that surprising to see May go out there and turn the ball over and kind of struggle a little bit. We're also seeing him now get to a stage where he's never been before, right? Where he's making it deeper in the playoffs. And, you could think of how many times that happened in the NBA, where we have these like really strong young teams that are coming along. They get deeper in the postseason and they kind of fall apart a little bit, and they need to gain that experience before they can get over the hump and actually be a contender and potentially win. And it doesn't even always happen for teams, right? Like, sometimes we see them get that opportunity earlier in their career and then things go south and they never get back to that point. Right now, though, I think for the Patriots, they're in such a great position. And I mean, it's them. Like, we have to give all the credit to them. Vrabel's done an outstanding job. They have a ton of talent on the team. They're coaching them up well, but things are also really lining up for them, right? And we can go back to the Bo Nix injury, which is such a weird situation.
Baby.
I mean, you think about, like, I think everyone jokes about like everything being a simulation, right? Like, I think the simulation even thought the Bills were going to win. And when the Bills didn't pull it off, they were like, oh, what's going on? This isn't computing. And it's just Bo Nix is out, like, just blow the whole thing up. Because,
Justin,
you look at this
gotta
game.
Be craziest playoff injury that I can ever remember. You win the game in epic fashion. You're celebrating it, and then the coach goes to the podium and says, oh, by the way, Bo Nix is out for the remainder of the year. He's having surgery on his ankle on Tuesday. The media in the room must have been like, huh? What? Am I hearing this right? What?
I don't know about you, but I don't know if I've ever like double checked a piece of news more than that one. Like, I saw it and I'm like, well, that's obviously not true. Like, that's ridiculous.
Fake.
Someone would try to pass that as truth, right? It was like, wait a minute, and that person has it. Oh my God, it's real. Yeah, but like, him not being out there for this game, it does just change everything. And it's not just about like the final score of the game in terms of will the Broncos be able to put up points with Stidham out there. It's also like the field position game. Like, can they move the chains, or are we going to see May and that Patriots offense consistently in shorter fields, making it easier on them? I think that is going to be the case in this one. And I don't want to discount Denver's defense by any means, because they are also a really, really strong defense. Not quite as strong as the Texans, in my opinion, but they are also a great defense. And yet they're going to be put in such a difficult position here, not having their starting quarterback, and like a completely different style of quarterback too. Like, Stidham is not going to be out there scrambling. He's not going to be buying time. Like, that's just not the kind of player that he is. He's more of that pocket passer. And then you look at like how strong the Patriots are against the run. Are the Broncos going to be able to lean on the run a little more in this game? I don't think so. Like, Milton Williams and that interior pressure that they get, in terms of being like a great run stuffer, he was so disruptive in this game that I think that's just going to continue. That's going to shut down the run for the Broncos. Like, I just see them really struggling. And I think Vegas does too, right? Like, Troy Rennick of the Denver Post, he tweeted it out today. The Broncos would have been 1-point favorites if Bo Nix were playing in this game. As it stands, last time I checked, they're 5.5-point underdogs in this one. That is just a huge swing. So yeah, like I said, everything is looking up for the Patriots right now, and I'm not that worried about May. Could he potentially have another turnover or two in this game? Yes, but I think it's going to be so difficult for the Broncos to overcome that Patriots defense, which is also in the conversation for one of the best defenses in the league in the way they're playing. And that's an interesting one too, because I think so often people look back at like regular season statistics, and I don't think you can do that necessarily with the Patriots because they had so many injuries along the way. They got by, but now this is the version of this defense that they were trying to be all season long. And man, they look fantastic. And I think it's going to help lead them right to the Super Bowl.
I'm right there with you. I take the Patriots to cover, and that I don't trust Stidham at all. That said, though, Justin, it's going to be hard for Jared Stidham to play worse than C.J. Stroud did. C.J. Stroud was horrific in that game against the Patriots. I credit to the Patriots. Their defense was sensational in the game, but C.J. Stroud just looked uncomfortable, right out of the gates in that game. It felt like every pass he threw in the first half was interceptable, ended up with 4 interceptions in the first half. And then you have D'Amico Ryans coming out with his, halftime interview. And he's like, the main thing, CJ needs to understand is that his team has his back. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, should they bench him? God, he's been horrible. So my question for you here, Justin, is, was CJ Stroud so horrible in that game that the Texans should look for an upgrade?
I don't think we're at that point yet. No, I think they're going to continue to trot him out there. Of course, he's going to take a ton of blame for the loss. And that goes back to what we were saying off the top, right? The idea that quarterbacks, whether it's right or wrong, are going to take a lot of the blame or, get a lot of the praise when a team wins or loses. And in this instance, this was just an awful game for him. But can't we give him like a little bit of a pass on this game specifically? I think the conversation with him is more about his career as a whole and what's happened since that rookie season. In this game, going up against a difficult defense, not having Nico Collins out there, I think those things really kind of add up to it's a struggle for him. Woody Marks is not a sustaining running back. He's not the kind of guy that you could put the ball in his belly and he's going to be that engine of the offense for you. So what did they have? Like, right? They had to rely on the rookie receivers, on Christian Kirk. Like, there wasn't a ton out there for Stroud to get it done in this game. And of course, he completely face plants and, doesn't overcome all those difficulties at all by any means. But I think the bigger thing is just what's happened to him since that rookie season. And I think it's defensive coordinators did a little more work on him, started to kind of figure out some ways to beat him, trying to get to him early in games. And also, I just don't think he has the same environment that he had when he was a rookie, right? You go back to that rookie season when Nico Collins was breaking out, when Tank Dell was catching fire, the offensive line was a lot better there, right? And Stroud probably got too much of the praise for the success that team had. The defense was also very good. It was just a really strong setup around him when he came into the league. Since then, the offensive line has kind of fallen off a cliff, right? We've seen Laremy Tunsil get traded away. They haven't really been able to restock at that position whatsoever. This year, like Pro Football Focus's final offensive line rankings, the Texans were 27th. That might even be generous, to be honest. Like, this offensive line was bad, but that's not the only thing here, right? It's not the same skill position players around him, right? He doesn't have the Tank Dell going away was a big thing for this offense, him getting hurt, and we'll see. Hopefully he can get his career back on track and come back. I know those two are very close as well, but right now it's Nico Collins and some unproven guys. I have a lot of faith that Jaden Higgins, who was a rookie this year, that he'll be able to emerge potentially as a number 2 option in the passing attack, but we need to see some changes. And right now, I'm looking at CJ Stroud. This is not in terms of the type of player that he is, because they're very different players, but I'm seeing a little bit of like that Cam Newton thing in him, where Cam Newton, when the good times were happening and they were out to a lead, he was the funnest quarterback to watch. He was crushing. He would dominate his opponents. But when the adversity hit, it wasn't the same guy out there, and he would struggle, and we'd see the turnovers happen, and he would kind of crumble, and he would have a really hard time overcoming those kind of things when defenses got after him early. I kind of see that right now for CJ Stroud, and I don't know what the reason is for it. I know there's a lot of rumblings behind the scenes and stuff, but I'm not going to give any credence to that yet. I just think we need to see this guy continue to develop, and I think the biggest thing is we shouldn't be looking at him like he is a Josh Allen, a Lamar Jackson, even a Drake May, somebody who like lifts everyone around him up. I don't think he's that guy. I think we need to view him more as what he is, which is a quarterback that needs that environment around him in order to be successful, in order to produce. And we know there's a lot of pieces in this Texans team right now that are strong. That defense is phenomenal. Nico Collins hopefully will be able to stay a little healthier next year. And they'll be able to add some more pieces. And I think a key will be trying to solve that offensive line, getting him that protection, and then building out from there. So I'm not done with him by any means. If we're talking about like dynasty, which this time of year, dynasty fantasy football is huge, I would even be trying to see if I could get him cheap after a performance like that, where everyone saw him just crumble, because you might be able to get him at a discount right now. And I still think that he's going to have a solid NFL career, but they need to improve that scenario for him and that setup and some of those pieces around him, including the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, he just looks absolutely horrific. And I remember, watching the game, growing up a Patriots fan, you see, the Peyton Mannings of the world go into New England and struggle to play in the weather after playing their whole season in a dome. And, I'm thinking back to pre-draft when CJ Stroud was asked if there's any current NFL rule you could change or create a rule, what would you change? And he said, I think everybody should play in a dome if you're in a cold area. And that's what it felt like. It seemed like he was thinking, standing there on the sidelines after throwing his fourth interception. Like, damn, this game should be in a dome. And that's the way I felt with him. And obviously, to your point, Justin, didn't have Nico Collins in the game. The offensive line needs to get better. He's only in year 3. You're not going to give up on him entirely. But, I mean, it's kind of like the inverse J.J. McCarthy situation where it's like the Vikings had this championship roster. They go with their young quarterback. They take a step back. The Texans have a championship defense. Do you want to wait for this young quarterback develop, or do you want to at least think about and explore veteran options that might be out there or more proven options that might be out there to maximize the opportunity you have with this defense, provided you can also improve that offensive line because they have the weapons. Nico Collins is one of the better receivers in football. They have some solid options. So it's either Stroud needs to improve or they need to find some improvements elsewhere. Fortunately, for my Patriots, sure was fun watching him throw those picks. I had a lot of fun watching him just struggle. Some real bonehead decisions out there. It was a hell of a good time watching that, Justin.
One thing that I will throw some cold water on is I see a lot of people talking about Davis Mills as backup, and Davis Mills having success this year. He went 3-1. The loss was against the Broncos, and it was a close game, and you could, give him a bit of a pass for that loss based on the fact that it was the Broncos and the Broncos defense. I don't think that's the answer here, folks. Like, people who are looking at that small sample size and thinking that Davis Mills should be the one to maybe take over, that is not what should happen here. I think you continue to trot out Stroud. You see if he can improve. You see if you can improve the things around him. And then you make a decision in a year's time. And I wonder, they'll probably pick up the fifth-year option. I don't know how soon they will want to lock him down on a bigger deal. They probably want to buy as much time as they can before they make that decision for all the reasons that we stated here. But yeah, it's one where I think people who are looking back at that rookie season and wondering when that guy is going to show up, I think they need to reassess why he was successful in that rookie season and realize that it wasn't just because he is a phenomenal player. It was because there was a lot of great pieces around him that were helping lift him up. And I think that's going to be the way his career probably goes unless we see him develop a ton over the next couple seasons.
Fifth point here. The NFL nailed the overtime rules. It took a lot of revisions to get to this point, but at this point, it's a real debate whether to receive or kick the ball first. There's true pros and cons to each side of that. And, we saw Bills and Broncos go to OT, Rams and Bears go to overtime. The new rules, the games are still super exciting. Both teams get a possession. And I think one of the things that made me think about is in other sports, baseball adding the pitch clock, changing the size of the bases, willing to experiment to improve the quality of the game for the viewer. It goes to show why I also think the NBA can't be shy about changing stuff like the lottery rules. Like what they did a few years ago with flattening the tanking odds has not made tanking better. If anything, it's made it worse because now more teams are tanking to the middle. So they can't be shy about changing the rules again, doing whatever it takes to put an end to tanking, similar to the NFL trying out different overtime iterations to find what works best. And I come away feeling, Justin, like they've landed on something that's great. Do you feel the same as me?
Yeah, no, it's super fun. This is the way it always should have been, right? And I agree with you. I think one of the things that makes people really hesitant, or makes leagues especially hesitant to change, is because a lot of people hate change. A lot of people are going to complain. It's going to happen every single time. And yet you got to keep innovating. And yeah, this was like you mentioned, kind of step by step. It was a slow process to get here. But of course, it's been a fantastic playoffs. And when you see two games come down to overtime like we did this week, you want to see everyone get an opportunity to get the ball. You want to see, teams having to make that really tough decision. And I don't know about you. And every game would be a little bit different here, but I like the idea of let's kick it away and let's see what the other team does. And then we have an opportunity to go down and know what we need to accomplish. I'm all for that. But it depends on the team. It depends on, how you're feeling. I wonder, like in that Bears game, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't, go for two and try to just, win it outright. Which is really, an interesting thing to look back on. And I get it. I mean, short yardage, they weren't great in that game, so perhaps that factored into the idea. Of like,
and they were going, they're going
not
backwards.
A lot of confidence that we're going to be able to convert this.
And they were literally moving backwards on the game time touchdown. It's like, so I mean, it's a tough choice. I mean, I was thinking about it in the moment, like after that play, do you ride all the momentum and the good feelings, the crowd's going crazy, and go for two and try to win it, or do you just kind of feel out, well, we really didn't march down the field. This was tough. And we needed a little bit of luck and good fortune to actually get in. That was a really tough choice, but I think I would have loved to have seen them go for it there.
Yeah, that would have been absolutely wild if that happened. And you look at like the decision, of course, they got a chance to win it in overtime. Like, it wasn't like, the end of the world. Like that was a terrible mistake where if they had gone for it and if they had, not converted, that would have been all the conversation, right? Like, not that we'd be talking about firing Ben Johnson after how awesome he's been this year, but people would have been all over them for that decision. And that's just the nature of sports and the nature of fandom, of course. But like, could things have gone better this year for the Bears? Like, of course, they could have gone on and won the Super Bowl, yes. But what a victory like this whole season has been for them, right? Bringing in Ben Johnson was a huge get. Having him come in and mesh with the players there, especially, Caleb Williams, who, different personalities. I think before the season, some people weren't sure whether those styles were going to, work out well. And then you see later in the year in one of the post-game speeches, when they're giving a game ball to Caleb Williams and he's just citing how this team has the best coaching in the world and what a difference from last year to this year for them, to see them make it to the playoffs, to see them have these magical finishes to a bunch of games this year, to win a playoff game. I know they probably feel pretty disappointed today, but what an amazing setup they have now moving forward in terms of great coaching staff, in terms of so much young talent in that team, right? Like, and Caleb Williams still has a ways to go. Like, he looked a lot better this year, but he's going to improve. He's going to develop more. But man, the draft last year, like, it looks like they hit on these guys. Colston Loveland at tight end looks like he's going to be a force moving forward. Luther Burden at receiver in the second round. Even deeper, like Kyle Monungai, to get him in the seventh. He looks like he's going to be a good contributor, at least on this team. Roma Dunze's still there. Like, there are so many young pieces around Caleb Williams and around this, new fantastic coaching staff that they have, that if I'm a Bears fan, I'm disappointed, but I'm feeling really good about where things are going. Versus as a Bills fan, a lot of things to sort out, right? So at the moment, I kind of wish I had that Bears setup.
One name you didn't mention was the guy they got in the trade down involving Bryce Young in the trade with the Panthers, DJ Moore, who, did he or didn't he quit on that overtime interception by Caleb Williams? But DJ Moore, regardless of that individual play, incredibly frustrating of all these bright spots for the Bears all long. DJ Moore is the guy where you hope at some point Odunze and Burden and Loveland can continue ascending to alleviate the importance of him on that offense.
Yeah, I know our guy Matt Harmon, who obviously does reception perception, phenomenal work on receivers. He's always looked at this like Luther Burden was drafted to eventually take over for DJ Moore, that he could do a lot of the same things in the offense. I think that makes a lot of sense here, that, DJ Moore's time with Chicago could be coming to an end this offseason. We'll see. But it's like the accumulation of these plays, right? That specific play, even if he had gone all out for it, it still would have been a contested catch. There's no guarantee he would have caught that ball, right? But it's all these plays over the last couple seasons where he's just like walking off the field mid-play, or this one where it kind of looks like he let up. It's very, very strange, especially when you have a team here where, they're in contention. They had a chance to win this game and to potentially go to a Super Bowl. So it's really weird to see him kind of acting like that. I wanted to give him a little bit of a pass last season with how bad the coaching staff was, and I could see a veteran player start to check out a little bit. But this year, no excuses whatsoever. And, maybe that's just the stage of his career that he's at now. We know he can still make some incredible plays, and yet there's still these lapses. And sometimes, good receivers have this, right? I mean, we always talk about George Pickens and how George Pickens at his best looks like one of the best receivers in the game. And yet sometimes there's these contests where he goes out there and it's like mentally he is just totally checked out. It is not the same player whatsoever. And you wonder what exactly is happening that's kind of leading to those. I'm wondering that because I'm trying to predict it. I'm trying to project the stats for these games, right? It always makes it difficult with those guys. And yeah, I think DJ Moore, though, his future in Chicago, I'm not so sure because they have so many other pieces there. They're not going to need to rely on him. And if this conversation continues where people are questioning his effort, including if it starts to happen within the building, then you'd think that they would look to move on.
Oh. As you said, it looks like they nailed their draft. I know Tyler Warren had an awesome season for the Colts, and they got ragged on draft night for taking Loveland ahead of him. But the way Loveland closed that season with his size at tight end looks like a very, very strong target for Caleb Williams in the years to come. Very bright future there. But the Rams do move on. They win that game in overtime, 20-17. McVay admitted after the game he thought he coached poorly in that contest. They kind of moved away from the run early on in that game. Didn't see a lot of Blake Corum at all. Kind of strange. And now they move on to face the Seahawks. Seahawks are 2.5 point home favorites. What needs to happen for the Rams to really stand a chance in this contest against that terrifying, scary Seahawks defense?
I mean, it's going to be a really, really good game. We've seen two good games from these teams already this year. I wonder, too, like when you look at the way these two teams match up, how much of it being a divisional opponent factors in, because we've seen kind of a lot of outliers in the games between these two teams, right? Like, whether the Seahawks are going to be able to get to Stafford, I think is huge. We saw him sacked 4 times on Sunday. Jared Smola, Draft Sharks, he tweeted this out today that the Seahawks in the 2 games versus the Rams this season, 0 sacks, but the Seahawks in their other 16 games, 49 sacks, right?
Wow.
So it's a very strange one where they've been able to keep him relatively clean against the Seahawks despite that pass rush there. And I just think sometimes you see these things in these divisional games, right? Another one would be the Seahawks rushing attack, where the Rams have, for the most part this season, been very good about shutting down opposing run games. And yet, you look at the 2 times these teams have played each other, Kenneth Walker, who has been so sporadic in terms of his production this season, the first meeting, 111 yards and a touchdown. The second meeting, he ran for 100 and a touchdown, also had another 64 receiving yards. On top of that, Zach Charbonnet dealing with this knee injury. He's undergoing an MRI today. We'll see what comes out of that. We'll see if he's able to play this week. I have my doubts at this point in the week, but we got to get updates on that, and we'll monitor that one all week long. So no guarantee that Charbonnet is going to be out there in this one. Can they actually find a way to stop Kenneth Walker, who is coming off a really big game and had a ton of success against them this year? And I say that as someone that is incredibly frustrated with Kenneth Walker. All season long, this guy has been so difficult to pin down for fantasy. He goes into these tough matchups like against the Rams and produces. He has very easy opponents and puts up relatively nothing. It's been a really, really tough season for anyone that drafted him. And I've apologized to a lot of people out there because I was recommending drafting him. And don't worry, I went through it too. I drafted him on a ton of teams, and he had these big games here and there. But it was just hard to know when to put him in your lineup, which made him like one of the worst fantasy picks this season. So I feel bad about that one. But now, at a very important time in the season, he's starting to come on, and maybe a guy who, has had a lot of injuries, who's been banged up throughout his career, maybe he's going to be a little fresher because they were splitting time with him and Zach Charbonnet, and now they can start to really lean on him. So I think the Rams trying to shut down this run game that's had a lot of success against them, I think that's going to be really big for this one because Kenneth Walker is that home run hitter. Like Kenneth Walker, even though he's been frustrating for fantasy managers this season, he can go out there this week and he can really help lead the Seahawks to the win, whether Charbonnet is available or not.
Who do you think wins this game?
I think it's going to be the Seahawks. I think they just look really good. And, another area on their team that I think I got wrong this year was I had a lot of doubts about Sam Darnold leaving Minnesota, going away from Kevin O'Connell. I thought they had a really good environment for him.
Shout out to really KOC. Shout out, my favorite coach.
I really thought that they were a big part of his success, right? I really thought that because of the environment that they had there, that helped him have that like career resurgence. and get to, where he was last season, and that going to Seattle, it was going to be a lot tougher to recapture that. And yet Clint Kubiak managed to do it. That guy looks fantastic. I can't wait to see him get a head coaching job this cycle. He definitely deserves one. But Sam Darnold has been really, really good this year, and I think they're going to be able to continue that against a Rams team that has also been fantastic. But I think we're getting to a stage in the season where some of these older players, maybe it's starting to factor in a little more. We saw Devontae Adams get banged up late in the year. He's a guy who just turned 33. Obviously, Matt Stafford a little bit older. I wonder whether that was factoring in, right? A couple older guys there in the cold weather in Chicago. That might have slowed down that offense a little bit there. But the Seahawks just look top to bottom like the best team in my mind. And the one thing I will say, you've been riding a high this whole show. We've been talking up the Patriots. I do think that this game decides the Super Bowl. I think the winner of Rams-Seahawks is going to be the team that eventually walks away with the Lombardi Trophy. And at the moment, I think it's going to be the Seahawks.
I'd be surprised otherwise. With the Patriots and the Broncos with Stidham, I'd be pretty shocked if either of those teams could take down the Rams or the Seahawks. I do think it'll be Seahawks-Patriots, and I hope the Super Bowl on February 8th is a great game. But Patriots are young. They're fortunate to be in this position. Last thing, Justin, a little extra point here for us. I've said congratulations on every platform on the planet for you winning the Fantasy Pros Accuracy Contest once again. So have to say it on here as well. Congratulations, man. I mean, pretty awesome.
I appreciate that. You had done it on a couple different platforms. I teased you that like MySpace was going to be next or something. You were going to, congratulate me on some platform that no one's using anymore. No, I appreciate that, man. And it was especially sweet because I took 5 years off of doing the Fantasy Pros Accuracy Contest. So to come back against, 160 something other analysts from across the industry and to kind of have a little bit of doubt, I will admit that, after all that time off, before I had left, I had finished with 4 straight top 5 finishes. I had been in the contest 9 times and I had finished in the top 10, 8 of those years. And the other year I finished 11th, which is like just so bittersweet.
Wow.
It was so close to being top 10 every time. And I won it in 2019, the second to last year before I stopped doing it. And then this year, joining Yahoo, everything was just going so great. I decided to jump back in the contest and kind of test my skills again. And I could have never imagined that, to walk away on top again. It was fantastic. And I think it was really nice winning it the first time. I kind of think this one felt even better. Just because it was like a bit of a flex, like, oh, okay, like all those years that I wasn't in the competition, I probably could have been placing pretty high in all those as well. So yeah, it's great. And, it's a fun thing that I probably take way too seriously. I'm really competitive. But it's nice to get that result at the end of the year. And now I get to hold the bragging rights for a full season, right? Until we get to do it all again in September.
Pretty awesome happens your first year with Yahoo Fantasy as well. Place we all grow up, looking at Yahoo Fantasy, and you finish top 10 in quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, not tight end. What happened in tight end, Justin? What happened?
Tight end is always the hardest. Tight end's so hard because they only take like 15 tight ends every week. I know you're kidding, but they only take 15 tight ends. And you could be a backup tight end who scores a touchdown randomly, and all of a sudden you're the tight end 12 on the week or something, right?
Wow.
So I've always found that position to be very, very difficult. So the fact that I was even remotely good at tight end this year, I was happy with that. Yeah, I'm glad that I did enough of the other positions.
The only lock was ranked Trae McBride first, and that's it. It was so random otherwise. Even Brock Bowers. I mean, I remember my fantasy draft in my friends league. It was like Bowers or McBride. Who am I going to take? It's a real debate, but McBride just one of the best tight end seasons in fantasy we've ever seen.
Yeah, and next year, tight end looks, we say this a lot, but tight end actually next year looks loaded. And a big part of it is because that rookie class that we talked about on this show, right? Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, Harold Fannin Jr. I think there's other guys that we could see step up too, like Terrence Ferguson. He could get a bigger opportunity with the Rams next season. Mason Taylor, if they can sort out the quarterback situation for the Jets. Like, it was such a great tight end class this year. It's going to make things a little bit easier for fantasy, even though it is still looking like it's going to be like Trae McBride or bust Trae McBride, or who else are you going to get? Because, he is by far the top fantasy tight end going into next season. But yeah, it looks like that position is going to be loaded next year. Absolutely.
Justin, thank you so much for joining me. People can always find your stuff on Yahoo Fantasy. Thank you, man. Keep up the amazing work.
I appreciate you having me on, man, and good luck to your Patriots. I hope, despite what we said about what we think is going to happen with the Super Bowl, I hope they can get there and make you proud.
Thank you, Justin.